Hey, my name is JC Dean, and I want to share with you briefly a concept that has kind of shown up multiple times over the last few weeks for me. And I think it's really cool when that type of stuff happens. And I want to share it with you based on how you can apply it to fitness and nutrition and health. And that idea is the power of imperfect action. Now, when I think of imperfect action, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit because I've been a perfectionist as long as I've been alive, and I always want to do things exactly right. I want them to be perfect, and if I can't do it perfectly, then sometimes I just don't want to do it at all, or put it off until the last minute, and then I realize I really need to get this done. And I was out on a daily walk, and I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about just getting things done and putting yourself on a deadline and making sure things happen. And they spoke about this concept of imperfect action, and it really resonated with me. And what's cool is I'm also reading this book, or actually I'm rereading a book called The Practicing Mind, and here is the book. And I'm rereading this because when I first read it a couple years ago, I really resonated with a lot of the concepts and ideas, mostly because it's talking all about being wrapped up in the process and doing things slowly and taking the time to really nail down what you're actually doing and not getting hung up in the instant gratification and feeling like you have to have everything yesterday. And I'm going to go through a few quotes that I think are really powerful in this book. But before I do, I just want to talk a little bit about the whole fitness thing and getting in shape and improving your body, losing body fat, just getting stronger, more muscular in general. Whatever your goal is, it doesn't really matter. You have a goal and you know you want to get there. But I talk to people every day, and that's my job, really, coaching and answering questions, writing articles, helping people figure out the answers. And after all this time of working with individuals and writing articles and getting feedback and people emailing me and coaching at the gym and just talking to people and interviewing people and finding out what they're struggling with, the number one thing I would say that people write into me and ask me about and leave comments on my articles is consistency. And it's not that they ask about how to be more consistent, it's what they basically tell me that that's the thing they struggle with the most. So it's one thing to know that you have to do a certain thing in order to get what you want. But it's another thing to do it and to get started and to push yourself into actually doing it. And so I think this is a really interesting thing because a lot of times we know what we need to do, and we know that in order to reach a certain outcome, in order to get a certain result, whether it's a lower body fat or more muscle or just improving your well-being and how you move and function, there are some steps that are necessary that you have to go through in order to get there. And a lot of times we can associate those actions with pain, or we can be frustrated with the fact that maybe we tried before and it didn't really work out, or we didn't give it that much of an effort and we didn't really get what we wanted. And what I think is interesting is I know myself, in being a perfectionist for the longest time, I tend to procrastinate if I feel like I can't do something exactly perfect or exactly the way I want it. Or in the past, I would pick a program and I felt in my head that this was the most perfect program, and if I could just execute it absolutely perfectly, never miss a day, then I would get these amazing results from my efforts. But something would always come up, and it might be within the first week, it might be within the first month, it might be 3 months down the road, and something would happen and I couldn't train, or I would miss a session, or I would be traveling and I didn't have access to a gym. Whatever it was, something would come up. And in the past, when I would have to miss a session, or I wasn't able to hit the gym the way I wanted to, or I didn't have the equipment, I would automatically feel like a failure and feel like I've messed everything up. And the more I converse with people every day, the more I read these emails and read these comments left on my articles, I start to see the same pattern in everyone else. And I realize that a lot of times we want things to be absolutely perfect. And we feel like things have to be absolutely perfect if we want to get the best results. And it took me a long time to understand this concept, but it's better to act, and it's better for your actions to be imperfect than to not act at all. And what I mean by that is You can have the best intentions. You can plan on training 4 days a week, no matter what, and you can plan to have the best diet and follow it exactly the way it's written out. But inevitably, you're going to have some not so perfect days, and you might completely screw up some days. But that's just being human. That's just how it is. You can be perfect for a couple days, but no one can be perfect forever. So one thing I had to learn was that I had to be more forgiving of myself on the days that I miss a session, or the days that I don't feel that well. So I don't eat exactly the way I want to, or I don't perform as well as I want to. And once I learned how to forgive myself and realized that I didn't have to be perfect, I still got results anyway if I continue to take action despite not being able to perform the way I wanted to. So a quick example of this is, let's just have a situation where you know that for the last 2 months you've been training 4 days a week, and something comes up the next week, and you know it's going to happen and it's inevitable. You can't get out of it. You're going to have to travel, or you're going to have to stay late for work, or whatever it is, and it throws a wrench into your schedule. And what this essentially means is you can't train 4 days that week. You may not be able to train 3 days. Maybe you only have 2 days that are going to allow you to train, and that's it. Well, you have two options. You can either make the most of those 2 days and do something that's going to benefit you going into the next week, or you can say, well, this isn't going to be perfect, and I'm just going to say to hell with it and just not do anything. Now, the people that pick the first option, that get something done anyway, they tend to do way better in the long run because they know that they can't be perfect. But the person that says, oh, to hell with this, I can't be perfect, I can't do the plan as prescribed, so I'm just going to lay off of it and give up, essentially. Those people tend to never reach their goals because they don't forgive themselves when they mess up. And the same thing applies to nutrition. I've read it a million times. I did really well on my diet for 2 weeks, and then I ate out with some friends, and I felt like I messed up my diet, so I just went back to my old habits. This happens all the time. So I want to read these quotes to you from The Practicing Mind because I think they're really important, and I think they're powerful if you will apply them to your life. The first one is a question you ask yourself. Are you heading toward your goal? If not, then jump immediately to correct and skip the judgment because it has no value in your effort. Now that to me is really powerful because I know when I tend to mess up or I find myself not going toward my goal, I tend to judge myself really harshly. And that doesn't help anyone. And it sure doesn't help yourself because, yeah, maybe you messed up. Maybe you missed, a day on your diet, or maybe you overate way too much one day, or you skipped a training session because you slept in. Well, cool, it happened. Just pick up where you left off and get back on track. There's no need to say bad things to yourself. There's no need to judge yourself because it doesn't help you. Here's the other quote. When you let go of the attachment of the object you desire and make your desire the experience of staying focused on working toward that object, you fulfill that desire in every minute that you remain patient with your circumstances. Now, this is something I'm going to talk about in a later video, but there is a lot of power in being super committed to the process instead of focusing so much on your outcome. Because when you focus on your outcome, you tend to get wrapped up in all the what ifs and the perfect planning and the perfect scheduling that you feel like needs to happen in order to get to that goal. But if you remember that everything you do right now is going to affect how you feel and where you're at tomorrow. So if you look at a long enough timeline, your goal may be 6 months or 12 months out, realistically, but you won't ever reach that goal until you are completely focused on right now. And when you're focused 100% on the process and what you do today, then you have to remember that you're not always going to be perfect. And it's more important to take imperfect action every day rather than trying to be perfect every single day and judging yourself harshly. I would rather you hit 85 to 90% of your target over 12 months rather than be perfect for 3 weeks and then give up altogether and never get back on track. So remember, there's power in imperfect action. You don't have to be perfect every single day. Just make sure if you mess up or you find that you're not moving toward your goal, get back to where you need to be, jump back on the wagon, and get focused again. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.